Nora Lynn had always believed her mother died of liver cancer. Then, on her 23rd birthday, she received the diary her mother had hidden in a bank safe deposit box. Inside, she read that her father had been cheating with her stepmother since Nora was 5, siphoning money from the family bit by bit, and that her stepmother had once poured hot coffee over her mother's hospital gown. The last entry was in her mother's handwriting: "He's been poisoning me slowly. I checked. It's arsenic." Nora wiped her tears in front of the mirror. For 15 years, she'd been a servant in her own home, believing she was an orphan with no one to turn to. But she wasn't an orphan. She was a wolf that had been waiting for 15 years. The gift arrived on her birthday: a letter, a key, and a truth that would dismantle everything she knew about her life. The mailman rang the bell while she was crouched on the floor of the master bedroom, ironing her stepsister Anne's dress. The steam iron hissed white clouds. Her phone buzzed once: a bank alert. Balance, $327.40. Her father Richard had given her $1,500 for the month. Her stepmother Mina had borrowed $1,200 of it to enroll in a flower arranging class, promising to pay it back when she got her salary. 3 months later, Nora hadn't seen a cent. From downstairs, Mina's shrill voice cut through: "Nora. The mailman says there's a registered letter for you. Get down here." Nora set down the iron, hung Anne's $280 silk dress in the closet, and padded downstairs in her slippers. Mina sat in the living room with her legs crossed, sipping tea. On the coffee table lay a manila envelope, postmarked 2 weeks earlier, with a local law firm's return address. What's all this mystery? Mina watched Nora open it with narrowed eyes. You haven't gotten yourself into debt, have you? Debt collectors showing up at the door. Nora said nothing. She tore the envelope open and out slid a small silver safe deposit key and a handwritten letter on yellowed paper. The handwriting was elegant and achingly familiar: her mother Susan Chen's hand. 3 lines in, she folded the letter and tucked it back into the envelope. Her fingertips were cold. Susan wrote that she'd left some things for Nora in a safe deposit box at the bank. She'd planned to tell her after college, but the illness had moved too fast. At the bottom, she'd written a combination number, and a line that made Nora's scalp prickle. Darling, the person I've wronged most in this life is you. There are things you're old enough to know now. Open that box, and you'll understand everything. Remember, don't trust your father. Don't trust your father. What is it already? Mina's voice again from behind. Nothing. Just some old photos an old colleague of my mother's sent me. Nora tucked the envelope into her coat pocket. I need to step out. I'll be back in time to make dinner. Hey, Nora Lynn, you stop right there. Did you finish Anne's dress? Your father's bringing clients home tonight. Have you even bought groceries? Mina's voice chased her out the door, but Nora was already down the walk, still in her slippers. The March wind still carried a chill. She flagged a taxi and headed straight for the bank. On the way, she read her mother's letter 3 times. She understood every word individually. Together, they made no sense. Don't trust your father. Richard Lynn was a building supplies contractor in the city, a nice house in the suburbs, a luxury SUV, a reputation as a self-made success. Growing up, Richard had never been close to Nora, especially after her mother died and Mina moved in, but he'd never been outright cruel. Just absent. Indifferent. He looked the other way when Mina and made her life difficult. She'd always assumed that was just who he was. That she simply hadn't been good enough to deserve his attention. So why had her mother written, "Don't trust your father"? The safe deposit box was in the bank's underground vault. A clerk checked her ID and the combination, then led her to a private viewing room. The silver door swung open, revealing a stack of documents, a USB drive, and a worn leather journal bound in faded cloth. She opened the journal first, her mother's handwriting, entries spanning from the year before Nora was born until 3 months before Susan's death. She flipped at random, and the blood in her veins turned to ice. March 12, 2008. I looked through his phone. Her name is Mina Zhou, the new accountant at his company. She texted him, "Richard, I'm pregnant. 2 months. Nora just turned 5. How could he do this to me? Mina. Pregnant. 5. Nora was 23. And was 3 years younger, 20. But her mother's 2008 diary said Mina had already been pregnant with Richard's child. Anne's official birth year was 5 years later. Either Mina had miscarried that first child and had another later, or Anne's age had been doctored. She'd been made younger on paper to hide the timeline of her existence. She turned page after page. Her mother's journal laid out a complete, years-long nightmare in methodical, heartbroken detail. Richard had been involved with Mina since 2007. Susan had been pregnant with their second child. When she discovered the affair, the shock caused a miscarriage that left her unable to have more children. Richard felt no guilt, only greater urgency. He began systematically moving marital assets, transferring company shares to his mother's name, siphoning savings, and borrowing $60,000 from Susan's parents under the pretense of a business shortfall. He'd never repaid a cent. The final entry, dated 2 months before Susan's death, was written in a trembling, weakened hand. "I know how I got sick. He's been putting things in my food. I looked it up, the symptoms of chronic arsenic poisoning match my liver disease, exactly. But I have no proof now. Too late. I'm leaving all of this here, hoping Nora never sees it. Hoping she grows up safe and happy. But if she does read this, it means she's old enough to face the truth. My darling, I love you. Live well for me. Chronic arsenic poisoning." Nora crouched on the vault floor, hands over her mouth, dry heaving. Tears fell on the journal pages, smudging her mother's careful script. She shook violently, her skull full of static. All these years, she'd believed the official story: liver cancer, diagnosed too late. Everyone told her so. She believed it for 15 years. She'd tiptoed through that house like a ghost, serving Mina, and like a servant, enduring their insults, because she thought she had no one else. She was alone. Except she wasn't alone. She'd been living with her mother's killers and calling them family. She sat on the floor for nearly half an hour before she could trust her hands to stop shaking. She went through the rest of the documents, an unsigned draft of her mother's will, copies of bank transfer records, Mina's employment file showing her start date at Richard's company, and the USB drive. She plugged it into her phone. One audio file. 3 minutes, 28 seconds. She pressed play. Static hissed, then a woman's voice, "Mina, syrupy sweet," the sound crawling under Nora's skin. "Richard, when is she going to die? I've waited so long. We can't have him carrying that stigma forever, can we?" Then her father's voice, flat as weather talk, "Soon. The doctor says her liver's failing. 6 months at most. Hold on a little longer. Once I get the last of the money transferred out, she's done. Clean. What about Nora? When she's older, will she find out?" "Find out what?" "She's 8. She won't remember anything. And besides, she's a girl. What's she going to do? She'll grow up, get married, and she's out of the house. The family assets have nothing to do with her." The file ended. Nora clutched the USB drive so hard its metal casing left red indentations in her palm. No tears left. What replaced them was something she'd never felt before, a cold, surgical clarity. Her father and stepmother had killed her mother. Not for any grand reason. For money. For legitimacy. to clear Susan out of the way so Mina could move in. And Nora herself, she'd never been a daughter to them. She'd been a problem to manage, a piece of baggage to unload when the time came. She took 3 deep breaths, returned everything exactly as she'd found it, and relocked the box. When she stepped out of the bank, night had fallen. Streetlights cast orange pools on the sidewalk. Her face, in their glow, was eerily composed. She didn't go home. She went to her best friend Tanya Cheng's apartment. Tanya was studying law, freshly minted with her bar exam results, clerking at a local firm. They'd known each other since high school, bonded by the shared character in their names. Both of them had Nyen, which meant remember. Nora remembered Tanya. Tanya remembered her. That had always been enough. Tanya poured her hot water and listened without interrupting. When Nora finished, Tanya's face had gone pale and tight. Nora. I'm going to be honest with you. Criminally. This is uphill. Your mother's death happened 15 years ago. The statute of limitations is long expired. She was cremated, so there's no body for toxicology. The diary and the recording are circumstantial, good for context, but a good lawyer can argue your father was speaking in anger or exaggerating. Nora nodded. She'd expected that. But. Tanya leaned forward. Those marital asset transfers your mother wrote about. If those are real, we can go after them. You're her heir. The law says that when one spouse dies, their half of the marital estate passes to their heirs. In other words, the money your father siphoned away. Half of it was your mother's. Which means half of it is yours. Nora blinked. Then she smiled, a slow, cold curve that looked wrong on her face. So everything he has now, the house, the business, the accounts, half of it is mine. Theoretically. But actually recovering it will be a nightmare. Lots of proof required, lots of litigation. I'm not in a hurry. Nora cut her off, voice level. Tanya. I need you to find out exactly how much my father is worth. Real estate, shares, deposits, investments, everything. I need the full picture. What are you planning? Nora lifted her cup. Steam blurred the glass, and beyond it, the night pressed against the window, dark and unreachable. I want him to give back everything he stole from my mother. Brick by brick. Cent by cent. I want him to do it himself. The next morning, Nora walked back into the house. Breakfast was underway in the dining room. Richard sat at the head of the table, newspaper spread before him. Mina sipped bird's nest soup from a porcelain cup. And angled her phone for a selfie, pouting. 8 dishes of artisanal takeout crowded the tabletop. Nobody asked where Nora had been last night. Nobody'd saved her a plate. So you're back. Mina set her spoon down, mouth sour. I thought you'd run off for good. You know who did your dishes last night? And did. Making your little sister do the dirty work, aren't you ashamed? Nora didn't answer. She walked straight to her father, pulled out a chair, and sat. From her bag, she took her phone, opened the audio file, and maxed the volume. She placed it in the center of the table. When is she going to die? I've waited so long. We can't have him carrying that stigma forever, can we? Richard's coffee cup jerked. Brown liquid sloshed across the newspaper, soaking through the headlines. In an instant, his face went from ruddy to white as butcher paper. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Mina's smile froze. Her eyes bulged at Nora's phone like it was a cobra that had slithered out from under the tablecloth. And hadn't clocked it yet. Mom? What is that? Whose voice is that? Nobody answered. The room went silent for 10 full seconds. Nora let the file play to its last second, then picked up her phone and looked at her father. Dad. How did my mother really die? Richard's hand was trembling. The muscles in his face twitched uncontrollably. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded like sandpaper scraping rusted metal. Where did you get that? Mom left it for me. Nora smiled, bright and clean, the smile of a good, obedient daughter. She left me a letter saying there were things I should wait to see until I was older. Since I turned 23, I figured it was time. Turned out to be pretty interesting. It's fake. Mina's voice went shrill, fingernails digging into her palms. That woman was insane, jealous of Richard and me her whole life, and even dead she can't stop making things up. Who knows if that recording is even real? AI can make anyone say anything these days. Fake? Nora tilted her head, innocent. Should I call the police, then? Have their tech lab authenticate it? I also have a diary where Mom wrote about being poisoned. Maybe we should let the police take a look at that as well. Mina's shriek died in her throat. Her face cycled through shades of white and purple, lips flapping soundlessly. Richard had recovered enough to speak. He set down his coffee cup and studied Nora with a long, searching look, fear and fury mixed with something more raw, a hunter's realization that his prey had been a predator in disguise all along. Nora, he said, voice tight. What do you want? Nora smiled. She'd been waiting for exactly that question. Nothing much, Dad. Just some answers. She put her phone away and stood, looking down at him. Oh, and there's something else I need to tell you. I'm getting married. The announcement landed like a battering ram. All three of them froze. Married? Richard's eyes went wide. To who? Since when are you even dating anyone? His name is Dylan Gu. We've been together for a year now. It's serious. For just a moment, at the name, something warm flickered in Nora's eyes, and vanished. His family's well off. Good business, on par with ours. We both think it's time to make things official. Dylan Gu was a name Nora had guarded closely. A college classmate who'd pursued her for 3 years. She'd always said no, not because she didn't like him, but because she was afraid. Mina and were leeches. They'd find a way to exploit her relationship for their own gain, and she'd refuse to drag Dylan into that mire. Now things were different. Now she needed a reason, a legitimate, unassailable reason, to pry open the lockbox her father kept on the family fortune. An alliance marriage. The kind of arrangement that made perfect sense in their social circle. Richard's interest sharpened. The fear in his eyes receded, pushed aside by the reflexive calculation of a lifelong businessman. Dylan Gu. As in Gu of Mingqing Medical. Yes. Nora nodded. His father Michael is the chairman. Only son. The whole business will be his someday. He says the proper formalities won't be lacking, he's keen to do this right. But Dad. She paused, letting the moment hang. He's an only child. There's a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. As his future wife, I need to have my own standing. We can't look like I'm coming to him empty-handed, that would reflect badly on you. So I wanted to ask, what kind of dowry have you set aside for me? Richard's expression shifted. The color drained from his cheeks. He'd never thought about a dowry for Nora. In his worldview, Nora was always going to be someone else's responsibility eventually. She'd marry out, and that would be that. He'd never factored her into any financial plan. But he couldn't say that. Not after she'd just played that recording at the breakfast table. Dowry. He forced a smile. I'm sure we can work something out. Why don't you bring the young man over for dinner so we can talk properly? I won't shortchange you, I promise. Really? Nora's smile widened. She leaned in close and spoke in a whisper only he could hear. And what about my mother's estate, Dad? Are you planning to give that back to me too? Richard jerked backward. His coffee cup tipped, crashed against the marble floor, and shattered, brown liquid spattering his trousers. He looked up into his daughter's smiling eyes. They were Susan Chen's eyes. Identical. That night, Nora returned to Tanya's apartment and gave her the full play-by-play. Tanya listened in silence. When Nora finished, she let out a long breath. That was a hell of a bluff. What if they'd done something stupid? Done something to you? They won't. Nora lay back on the sofa, eyes closed. If I die, everything I have goes public immediately. I played that recording so they'd know exactly what I have. My mother couldn't finish what she started. But I'm going to. If they try to hurt me, they'll have to weigh the consequences. So you're really going to marry Dylan? I thought you didn't want to drag him into this. Nora opened her eyes. Her expression was complicated in a way Tanya rarely saw. After a long pause, she said, I told him. Everything. About my mother, about what I'm planning, about how messy this could get. And? Nora's smile turned wet at the corners. He said that was perfect, because his family has the best legal team money can buy. Pro bono. Tanya blinked, then burst out laughing. Okay. I like this guy. Bring him over sometime. Later. First we get the job done. Nora sat up, the softness hardening into that same knife-edge focus. Tanya. That asset list. How far along are you? Tanya pulled a folder from her bag and handed it over. Nora flipped it open. 3 properties, the family house, a penthouse downtown, and a vacation condo. Richard held 65% of the shares in Guodong Building Materials, valued at roughly $3 million based on last year's books. Bank deposits and wealth management products came to another $800,000. Total, nearly $5 million. How much of this, Nora traced a finger down the page, was my mother's? Based on the diary entries and those transfer records you found. At least $2.3 million in traceable transfers. Tanya turned to the next page. The problem is proof. Many of those transfers happened 15 years ago. Worst of all is the company. Your father started Guodong Building Materials during the marriage, so it's marital property. But after your mother died, all the shares went into his name alone. You'd need to prove those shares originated as marital assets. Does Mom's diary count as proof? It counts, but it's not enough. We'd need harder evidence, bank records, original incorporation files, documents showing your mother contributed to the business. Tanya closed the folder. This can't be rushed. Your father's been in business for decades, he's not stupid. If you push too fast, he'll shift assets to Mina or Anne, and there won't be anything left to claim. Nora thought for a moment. That's why I need Dylan as leverage. Let my father think there's profit to be made from this marriage. Right now he sees me as just looking for a dowry, he doesn't realize I'm after everything. And then? Nora went to the window. Down on the street, traffic flowed in a steady river of red taillights and white headlights. First, she said, I need the internal ledger. Mom's diary mentioned a second set of books at my father's company, real revenues and expenses, different from what they report to the IRS. I get my hands on that, I can prove the company's actual value. Second, Anne's real age. If I can prove she was born during my mother's marriage to Richard, that's marital infidelity with a child born during the marriage. That's a nuclear weapon in any divorce proceeding. Third. Her voice dropped, cold. I'm going to make them hand it over voluntarily. No lengthy court battles, no drawn-out litigation. They'll give me back every cent they stole. Tanya felt a chill run down her spine. She'd known Nora for 8 years and had never seen her like this, composed, predatory, every word precisely weighted. Can you actually do this? Nora didn't answer at first. She looked at her phone screen, a photo of her mother holding her on a swing one summer when she was 8. Sunlight filtered through leaves, and both of them were laughing, eyes crinkled with joy. She flipped the phone face down on the table. Yeah. The next 2 weeks, Nora became someone else. She stopped catering to Mina and Anne. Before, she'd done all the cooking, cleaning, and errands. Now she handled only her own needs. Before, she'd fetch whatever Mina wanted without complaint. Now she'd smile sweetly and say, "You've got legs, don't you?" and walk away. What infuriated Mina most was Nora sitting at the dinner table. Previously Nora had waited until the family finished eating and scraped together whatever was left. Now, at mealtimes, she appeared promptly, took her seat beside Anne, and helped herself to whatever she pleased. "Who do you think you are, the lady of the house?" Mina slammed her chopsticks down one afternoon. "Your father works his fingers to the bone, and you sit around doing nothing, eating his food. Have you no shame?" Nora took a slow bite, dabbed her mouth with a napkin, and looked up. "I think you've got that backwards, Auntie. Dad works to support you and Anne. My mother's estate, the one you're wearing on your back and carrying in your handbag, wasn't meant for you." Mina's face turned the color of raw liver. Her mouth worked soundlessly. Anne, used to being the indulged favorite, tried a different tack. She whined to Richard with theatrical sorrow, "Dad, Nora's been so strange lately. She talks back to Mom all the time, and she accused me of stealing her clothes, which Mom bought for me, by the way. If Nora doesn't want to wear nice things, that's her choice, right?" Nora happened to be coming downstairs. She stopped on the landing and walked over to Anne, looking her up and down. Anne was wearing a cream-colored cashmere coat, the one Mina had taken from Nora's closet last winter. "That coat," Nora said. "You think it's yours?" "Of course it's mine. Mom said it was, like, $100 from some clearance rack." And rolled her eyes. 3,800. Nora pulled up a receipt on her phone and shoved the screen in Anne's face. "November 20th last year. I bought it with money I earned working part-time. The mom you're referring to, Mina, has never spent a cent on me. That coat is mine. Take it off." Anne's face drained. She cowered behind Richard. "Dad. Look at her." Richard opened his mouth, but Nora cut in first. "Dad, don't tell me you're going to defend her. For as long as I can remember, she's taken whatever she wanted from me, my clothes, my things, and you've never said a word. I'm 23 years old. If you're not willing to protect my property, I'll have to call the police. 3,800 is enough for a theft complaint." The word police hit Richard like a bullet. He was terrified of anything that might prompt official scrutiny. He turned to Anne, "Give Nora her coat back." Anne's eyes flooded with tears. She ripped off the coat, hurled it onto the sofa, and clattered up the stairs. Mina followed, pausing to shoot Nora a venomous look, "Little bitch. Just like your mother, dead before her time." Nora picked up the coat, folded it carefully, and held it to her chest. She showed no anger. She didn't even spare Mina a glance. "Soon, Auntie. Soon." Mid-March. Dylan came to dinner. He arrived with the full arsenal: 2 bottles of premium Baijiu, top-shelf bird's nest, a designer skincare set for Mina, and a bouquet of white roses for Nora. Tall, broad-shouldered, with good manners and a quiet confidence, he charmed Richard easily. "Impressive, young man," Richard said, pouring Dylan tea. "Nora tells me you're involved in the family business." "Learning from my elders, mostly." Dylan smiled. "My father says once I'm settled, he'll hand over the new development district to me. So I'm trying to get my affairs in order." Richard caught the implication: business ties, future influence. His eyes glinted. And, the engagement itself. Have you given any thought to the formalities? I was thinking $88,000 as a betrothal gift, auspicious number. Rings, jewelry, separate. But Mr. Lin, Dylan set his cup down, my family takes marriages seriously. We value compatibility and standing. I love Nora, and her background doesn't matter to me, but my father will want to see that everything's proper. So I'd like to ask, what are you planning for Nora's dowry? Nora sat quietly beside Dylan, expression placid, but the corner of her mouth twitched upward. Every word was bait. Every sentence a step in the trap. Richard paused, calculating. $88,000 wasn't small change, but if a marriage to the Gu family opened commercial doors, the returns would dwarf it. I won't shortchange my daughter. Richard weighed his options aloud. I'll give her the downtown penthouse, worth about $280,000, and a car, at least $50,000. Sound reasonable? Dylan glanced at Nora, questioning. She squeezed his hand. A penthouse and a car. Dylan rubbed his chin. I don't doubt your generosity, Mr. Lin, but I should be honest. My father's expectation is that the dowry be at least 3 times the betrothal gift, $264,000 minimum. Your proposal meets the dollar value, but a property isn't liquid. My father might see that as you padding the numbers with something intangible. Richard's expression soured. What's your suggestion, then? Maybe convert the dowry to cash or equity. You have company shares, right? Transferring some to Nora would show you value her as a daughter, and it would also strengthen the business ties between our families. Richard's eyes narrowed. Equity. The boy was going after his equity. His instinct screamed no, but then again, the shares would remain in the family if Nora held them. And a business partnership with the Gus was a real prize. Fine. He forced a smile. I'll think about it. You're Nora's father, I'll be fair. Father. Nora spoke up. Don't you mean you have 2 daughters, Dad? The temperature dropped. Mina froze mid-reach for a dish. Anne's phone clattered to the table. Everyone looked at Richard. Nora laughed lightly, brushing it off as a joke. Just saying. Go on, Dad, I want to hear how many shares you're thinking of giving me. Richard's laugh came out strained. He gulped his tea. The meal continued in awkward silence. Afterward, walking Dylan out, Nora felt his hand tighten on hers. Your father's not going to cave that easily. Let him drag his feet. She straightened his collar. The more time he takes, the more I can dig. I'll get that ledger and Anne's birth certificate yet. Be careful. I will. She came back inside to find Richard and Mina murmuring on the couch. They shut up the moment she appeared. She ignored them and went upstairs. In her room, she pulled her mother's diary from its hiding place and flipped to the tabbed page where she'd been keeping notes, the hospital where Mina had given birth, Anne's medical file reference, the contact info for her father's longtime accountant. She added one line, Anne's birth certificate, hospital archive, need to obtain original. Then she drew an arrow to a word at the bottom, breakthrough. The breakthrough came from an unexpected quarter. A few days later, Nora visited a copy shop near her father's company. Her mother's diary had mentioned that Richard used this particular shop for business printing, and the owner, a man named Mr. Zhao, had been a decent sort. She'd planned to ask about old records. Instead, a middle-aged woman in a cleaner's uniform approached her. Are you Miss Chen's daughter? The woman stared at Nora's face, eyes welling up. My goodness, you look exactly like her. Exactly. I'm sorry, you knew my mother. My name is Mei Zhang. I used to work as a cleaner at your father's company. I held you when you were a baby. Mei took her hands. Your mother was a good woman. If she could see you now, all grown up. Nora's heart tightened. Auntie May, you worked at the company for 5 or 6 years. From when you were 2 until you were 8. Then Mina Zhou came, and she got rid of all the old staff and brought in her own people. Your mother was furious, but your father wouldn't listen. Nora fought to keep her voice steady. Do you have time for some tea? I'd really like to talk about my mother. May checked her watch, then nodded. In a quiet tea house, with a pot of premium Longjing between them, May talked. She told the story in fragments, her voice thick with old pain. Nora had read most of it in Susan's diary, but hearing it from another person's mouth gave it weight and texture. I saw your father slap your mother once. In the middle of the office, in front of everyone. She'd found out he was moving money out of the company, and when she confronted him, he hit her so hard her lip bled. I was mopping the floor nearby, I dropped the mop. Then Mina came. She'd bring coffee just to spill it on your mother. One time she accidentally poured a full cup over Susan's white blouse, and your father stood there and watched. He didn't say a word. When your mother was in the hospital, I visited. She was skin and bones, but she still smiled and said, May, you're here. Her bedside table had nothing on it. I had to go buy her oranges. Your father and Mina never came to see her. Not once. Nora listened calmly. Under the table, her fists were clenched so hard her nails cut crescents into her palms. Her face remained still. Auntie May, do you remember who the company accountant was back then? The chief financial person. Old Fong. Greg Fong. May brightened. He was there for years. But Mina got rid of him too, replaced him with her own nephew. Greg Fong, Nora repeated. Would you know where he is now? He opened a small grocery store down south somewhere. I'm not sure exactly. But I have his daughter's WeChat, she's my son's classmate. May pulled out her phone and sent Nora the contact. Nora sent a message, and the reply came quickly. My dad doesn't talk about his time at Guodong Building Materials much. But if this is about Susan's case, I'll ask him. That night, the daughter called back. My dad says he kept a few things. Copies of the internal ledgers, some fake entries your father asked him to make, and transfer documents with your father's and Mina Zhou's signatures. He never knew what to do with them. He's been holding on to them for 15 years. Can I meet him? Tomorrow, 10 a.m. His grocery store is on Union Street. Nora ended the call and lay back on Tanya's couch, staring at the ceiling. Nora. Tanya came in with a bowl of instant noodles. Are you okay? Who called? Nora sat up abruptly and hugged Tanya, nearly appending the noodles. Her voice was muffled, shaky with an effort not to cry. Tanya. I have proof. Internal ledgers, fake records, their signatures. Tanya hugged her back tight. Once we start this, there's no going back. Are you sure? Nora pulled away. Her eyes were red but dry, her voice flat as frozen lake water. He stopped being my father the day he decided to kill my mother. I'm just a debt collector now. A debt collector with an invoice. The next morning, 10 o'clock sharp, Nora found herself in a modest neighborhood grocery store at 78 Union Street. Greg Fong was a tired-looking man in his 50s, bespectacled and slightly stooped. He took a long look at her, sighed, and pulled a brown paper bag from behind the register. You're Susan's girl. You've got her face. He placed the bag on the counter but didn't release it. Before I give you these, you need to understand, these are copies, not originals. They may not hold up in court. And I won't testify. Is that clear? Clear. Nora met his gaze steadily. Thank you. I won't drag you into this. He let go of the bag. Inside is 3 years of internal ledgers. Compare them to what was filed with the IRS, and you'll see at least $300,000 funneled into a shell company called Minda Trading, registered to Mina Zhou. Plus transfer documents with both their signatures, dated before your mother died. Nora opened the bag and shuffled through the yellowed sheets. Row after row of numbers. Signatures. A paper trail of quiet betrayal. Mr. Fong. She tucked the papers away and bowed deeply. Thank you. He turned back to his shelves, not letting her see his face. Don't thank me. Your mother deserved better. I didn't have the guts to help her back then. If this does some good, then maybe I've squared things. Nora walked out into March sunshine. For a moment, she just stood there, hugging the bag to her chest, breathing. Then she texted Tanya, got everything. Internal ledgers, fake records, transfer proof. Tanya, legal viability. Copies. No witness. Hard case. Time for Plan B. Nora smiled. At home, the house was empty, Richard at work, Mina and Ann out shopping. Nora took the opportunity to search thoroughly. In the bottom drawer of Mina's vanity, she found a locked jewelry box. The old-fashioned lock gave way to a bobby pin. Under the jewelry, folded tight, was a birth certificate. Nora unfolded it and stared. Ann Lin. Female. Date of birth, May 7, 2008. Place, City Maternity Hospital. Mother, Mina Zhou. Father, Richard Lin. Black and white. No room for doubt. But Ann's official ID said she was 5 years younger. May 2008. Susan Chen had still been alive then, not yet sick. While she'd been living in that house, thinking she had a marriage, her husband had already had a child with another woman, and hidden that child's existence for 5 years. Nora photographed every inch of the document, returned it to the box, and locked it back up. She looked at herself in the mirror. 23 years old, fine-featured, decent bone structure, but the eyes that stared back held a coldness that didn't belong to a living girl. She tallied the charges. Adultery. Proof. Child born within marriage to another woman. Proof. Systematic marital asset transfer. Proof. 4 counts. If her mother had lived, these would have meant a clean sweep in any divorce. But her mother hadn't lived. Criminally, it was too late. But civilly, there were other ways. She pulled up a draft text to Dylan, the one she'd been holding onto for days. She sent it. Plan B, Phase 1. Bring your lawyer to my house in 3 days. We're doing a prenup negotiation. The next 3 days, Nora did nothing. She went about her routine. She smiled. She answered texts. She tried on a wedding dress and posted a photo with the caption, waiting. And commented something snide, and Nora replied with a smiley emoji. On the 3rd night, Richard came to her door with 2 glasses of wine and a carefully calibrated expression, remorseful, paternal, conciliatory. Can we talk? Nora let him in. He talked. He told her about how she'd been so small when she was born. He told her he knew he'd made mistakes. He said he'd always wanted the best for the family. Dad, Nora interrupted gently. When you say, the family, did you ever mean me? Richard's mouth opened. No sound came out. I didn't think so. Nora set her wine down. Your family was you, Mina, and Ann. My mother and I were always outsiders. She was an obstacle. I was the obstacle's leftover. You didn't make the decisions you made for the sake of family. You made them to make Mina legitimate. Every, for your own good, you ever said was just to soothe your own conscience. She held up her glass and clinked it lightly against his. I'm not here to rehash old grievances. I'm here to negotiate. She pulled a folded sheet from under her pillow, a list of demands. The penthouse, transferred free and clear. 32.5% of Guodong Building Materials shares, with full voting and transfer rights. Cash inheritance, plus interest, about $400,000. Written acknowledgement from Richard and Mina that Susan had been entitled to those assets. You're insane. Richard launched to his feet. 32.5%. That's half the company. You'll bankrupt me. Bankrupt you? Nora tilted her head. My mother's dowry funded the company. She managed the books. She ran the clients. She built Guodong Building Materials alongside you, and you gave her nothing. She's dead. I'm her only child. I'm claiming what's owed to her. How is that bankrupting you? None of that matters legally. The law, Nora cut in, says marital assets are jointly owned. When a spouse dies, her half passes to her heirs. I'm her heir. So that 32.5%. It was always mine. Richard stared at her like she was a stranger, and realized she had been, because he'd never bothered to look. She'd studied law. And finance. Have you been planning this from the beginning? From the day I opened my mother's letter and found out how she really died. Richard sat heavily back down. What if I refuse? What if I say no to every single one of these demands? Nora picked up her phone and tapped through a folder. Internal ledgers. 78 pages. Fake tax comparisons, 12 discrepancies. Minda trading account statements, $300,000 in transfers. Anne's birth certificate, original. Mina's employment file, dated before her pregnancy was announced. And that audio file, should I play it again? Her finger hovered. Richard's breathing stopped. These are backed up in 3 separate places: cloud, hard copy, and sealed envelope held by a third party. If anything happens to me, even if I get hit by a car, those backups go to the tax bureau, the labor department, the media, and the police. She waited. So you don't need to worry about my safety, Dad. I've already taken care of that. Richard's lips moved soundlessly. Finally, I need some time. Equity transfers involve company procedures. 3 days, Nora said. In 3 days, I want to see a draft shareholder resolution transferring the shares. He shuffled to the door, stopped, and looked back. In the lamplight, for a moment, Nora's silhouette was Susan's. Nora, he said, would your mother really have wanted you to do this? I don't know what she'd have wanted, Nora said. But I know what she didn't want. She didn't want me to let it go. The house went quiet. Richard locked himself in his study and barely emerged. Mina's face grew tighter each day. And was confused and scared. She asked her mother what was happening. Mina didn't answer. One afternoon, Mina snuck into Richard's study while he was out. She tried the obvious passwords: his birthday, hers, Anne's. Nothing. On impulse, she typed Susan's death date. The safe opened. Inside, she found cash, gold bars, property deeds, and a stack of papers. She shuffled through them, her hands shaking. The top sheet was a breakdown of company share ownership, noting that 32.5% legally belonged to Susan's estate. The next was a draft legal opinion: in litigation, our client has little chance of success, recommend proactive settlement. At the bottom was a handwritten note from Richard. Fragmentary, crossed out, tentative. I, Richard Lin, hereby acknowledge that Guodong Building Materials was founded during my marriage to Susan Chen and is marital property, that Susan Chen contributed materially to the company's operations. It stopped mid-sentence. Mina stared at it. Richard wasn't planning to fight. He was planning to surrender. Useless, she hissed. Useless, useless, useless. She couldn't let him give in. Everything, the house, the money, the status, it was hers, her daughter's. She'd driven Susan out. She'd make sure Susan's spawn got nothing. She pulled out her phone and dialed an old contact, Big Wong. I need you to investigate someone. Dylan Gu. I need to know everything about him, his finances, his background, any scandals. Price whatever you want. Sure. Mina hung up. In the mirror, her face still looked composed, elegant. The years had been kind. But it was all crumbling. She smiled at her reflection. You think you can take what's mine, little bitch? Dream on. 3 days later, Nora didn't get a shareholder resolution. She got a circus. She came home to find an old woman in the living room, rural, loud, dressed in cheap patterned cotton. Mina had her on the couch with tea and pastries. Nora. Mina's voice dripped with artificial warmth. Come say hello. This is your father's aunt from the countryside. She's come all the way to see you. Nora didn't move. Richard had no such aunt. The old woman stood up, beaming. So this is Nora. All grown up. You've got your mother's face, you know. You knew my mother. Nora caught the cue. I changed her diapers. The woman laughed heartily. She called me auntie. Nora understood immediately. This was a plant. Someone pretending to be a relative of Susan Chen's, trying to inject a competing claim into the inheritance. Auntie, Nora said sweetly. If you changed my mother's diapers, then you'll know, what year was she born? What zodiac sign? Which village was she from? Easy. She was born 65, year of the snake. From Qingshi town. My mother was born in 66. Year of the horse. From Baisha town. My grandparents lived there their whole lives. I've never heard of Qingshi town. The old woman's face collapsed. She looked at Mina. Nora didn't raise her voice. She just smiled. Auntie Mina, maybe next time hire someone who's read the script. She went upstairs. But not before she pulled out her phone. Tanya. Mina's panicking. She's trying fake relatives. Tanya responded instantly, this is good. Panicked people make mistakes. Keep the pressure on. And Mina did make mistakes, one after another. She cried to Richard's employees. She tried to feed gossip to a local blogger, who backed off after learning the Gu family's reach. She showed up at Dylan's office and screamed, "Scam artist," in the lobby. Dylan had her escorted out with a kindness that was more withering than rudeness. This woman is unwell. Please call an ambulance, put it on my tab. That night, he called Nora, your stepmother came to my office. I can handle her. But my father caught wind of it. What did your father say? He said he's reconsidering the match if the Lin family can't be civil. Nora's stomach dropped. Michael Gu was a self-made man who prized dignity. If he saw the Lin family as a liability, Dylan might lose his case with his father, and Nora might lose her biggest lever. Give me a week, Nora said. I'll clean this up completely. Dylan said, take whatever time you need. I'll handle my dad. Don't let her rush your timeline. April 15th. The next hand played itself. Nora got a call from the state tax fraud unit. Someone had filed a whistleblower complaint against Guodong Building Materials for tax evasion. The estimated liability, over $200,000 in underreported revenue. She recognized the tactic immediately. Mina had reported Richard to the tax bureau. It was an unbelievably stupid move, not just because it hurt her own family's interests, but because it would lead to company audits and potential legal liabilities. If the company went under, what would Mina and N inherit? Nothing. Who filed the report? the officer asked. I'm not certain, Nora said carefully, but you might find it useful to know that my father's wife, Mina Zhou, has been in conflict with him recently. The report may be personal in nature. She called Richard. Dad, I just heard from the tax bureau. A crash in the background, another dropped cup. Who reported it? Who do you think? Nora's voice stayed even. I've been at Tanya's all day. Dylan has no motive. And the internal ledgers? They're not in my possession. But someone who knows where they're kept could have used them. She didn't name Mina. She didn't need to. Richard's silence lasted a full 30 seconds. How dare she, he finally whispered. How dare she touch the company? Nora softened her tone. Look, Dad. I know this is stressful. But right now, the most important thing is damage control. You need a clean equity structure to satisfy an audit. If you need someone to transfer shares to quickly, someone who'll support you through this, I'm available. It was the hook, give me the shares, and you get a loyal, tax-safe co-owner to weather the storm. Richard said he'd think about it. In the company, the tax investigation sent shockwaves. Mina's cousin, who'd been running the internal accounting, called her in a panic. They're auditing 6 years of records. They found our side books. If they nail us, the company is dead, and your husband might be looking at prison. Mina went white. She just wanted to cause trouble, not blow up her own ship. But she'd forgotten whose ship it was. Richard called her. The investigator confirmed the tip came from your email address. Are you insane? Do you want this family destroyed? She denied it. She blamed Nora. Richard wasn't buying. Nora was at her lawyer's all day. She has an alibi. What do you have? Mina had nothing. And that PI you hired to dig into Dylan Gu. The Gu family knows. Michael Gu called me personally. If you can't stop making enemies, I'll have to end this engagement myself. Mina's phone slipped from her hand. April 20th, Richard convened a family meeting in his study. Present, Richard, Mina, Nora, and the company lawyer. Richard's hair had grayed visibly in a matter of days. I've decided, he said, to settle Susan Chen's estate. Mina shot to her feet. A glare pressed her back down. The lawyer spoke, transfer of the downtown penthouse to Nora Lin. Transfer of 32.5% of Guodong Building Materials shares to Nora Lin, with full shareholder rights. Cash inheritance of $412,000, paid directly. In exchange, Nora Lin releases Richard Lin from further civil liability regarding marital asset transfers. Richard and Mina waive any future claims. Mina was shaking. Richard, you can't, this is everything, N's future. N's future will be provided for separately. Richard didn't look at her. You, however, will stop speaking now. Your stunts have cost us enough. Nora signed without hesitation, her handwriting steady. Richard signed slowly, as though each letter was being inscribed into his skin. Nora, he said when he'd finished, you win. Nora tucked her copy into her bag and stood. It's not about winning or losing, Dad. It's about taking back what was mine. At the door, she paused beside Mina. That coffee you spilled on my mother's blouse, all those years ago. I'm returning the favor. Mina's face went ashen. One more thing. Nora turned back. I'm not getting married. What? Wedding's off. Dylan and I agreed, we'll hold off. He thinks I should focus on the company first. I agree. The engagement had been a means to an end. Now that the end was achieved, the means could be set aside. You tricked me, Richard rasped. This whole time, the engagement, the dowry. I never lied to you. Dylan is real. Our relationship is real. I simply never told you when we'd get married. Richard lunged for his cup, but it was already empty. Nora walked out. The front door opened onto May sunshine. The magnolia in the yard had lost its petals, replaced by thick green leaves. She looked back at the house once, then turned away and didn't look back again. The rest fell into place with surprising ease. By mid-May, Nora was a 32.5% shareholder in Guodong Building Materials. At her first board meeting, several older employees teared up. "You look just like your mother. She used to sit right where you're sitting now." The company was profitable, $5 million in annual revenue, $800,000 net. Nora's share would pay over $200,000 per year in dividends. Richard told her she didn't need to come to the office. "I'll come anyway," she said. "Not to make trouble. To learn. A third of this company is mine now. I should know how it works." He had no argument. Nora sold the downtown penthouse for $260,000. Combined with the cash inheritance, she now had $700,000 in liquid assets. "What are you doing with it?" Tanya asked. "Some into the business, old equipment needs upgrading. The rest, I'm starting a foundation. In my mother's name. Legal aid," Nora explained. "For women like my mother. Women who don't have access to lawyers, don't know their rights, can't afford to fight. If someone had been there for my mother, she might still be alive." Tanya smiled, eyes bright with unshed tears. Susan would be proud. June brought the tax audit's conclusion. Guodong Building Materials was fined $320,000 for underreporting. Richard paid it out of his personal funds. Mina screamed about it. Richard threw a teacup at the wall. "You reported us. You wanted to make trouble. Here's the trouble. Are you happy?" Mina retreated to her room and cried all afternoon. But she didn't dare fight anymore. Richard's affection for her was evaporating by the day. Then came Anne's reckoning. Someone posted a long thread on a local gossip forum: the fake heiress of city constructions tycoon, age fraud, illegitimate birth, and a mother-daughter scheme against the first wife. Details so specific that anyone in the know could identify the family. The post spread like wildfire. Anne's social media was flooded with mocking comments. Anne stopped going out. She stopped answering calls. She lost 15 pounds. Mina accused Nora. But Nora didn't deny it, because she didn't need to. The damage had been done by someone else's hands. Nora gave an interview, not about the family drama, but about the company's future. When asked about online rumors, she smiled. "I don't comment on the past. I believe in moving forward." That one line fueled more speculation than any denial ever could. Mid-July. Nora moved out of the house. She didn't wait to be pushed. She rented a modest apartment in the west part of town, 2 bedrooms, clean, with a small balcony facing the sunset. She took only her clothes, her books, her mother's journals, and a few photographs. Mina watched from upstairs as the moving van pulled away. She knew, deep down, that Nora wasn't leaving defeated. She was leaving with over $2 million in assets and a third of the company's boardroom votes. "Mom," Anne said from behind her, "she's finally gone. We can have the whole house to ourselves." That evening, Richard came home and placed a manila envelope in front of Mina. Inside were photographs, Mina with a young man in a coffee shop, laughing, their hands clasped. Dated 3 days earlier. "He's Anne's dance teacher, it's not what it looks like." "Did you think I wouldn't look into you?" Richard asked quietly. "The same way you looked into Dylan Gu." Mina's mouth went dry. "The house is yours for another year. Anne's expenses will be covered." Richard picked up his briefcase. "My lawyer will send divorce papers tomorrow." The door closed behind him. Mina sat on the couch she'd taken from Susan, surrounded by luxury she'd never earned. And remembered the day she'd poured hot coffee down Susan's white blouse, triumphant and vicious. Now she understood. Revenge didn't come quickly. But it came. Nora learned about Mina's affair through Tanya. The dance teacher, can you believe it? Tanya laughed over noodles. She's 47. He's 28. Your father went ballistic. He's divorcing her with prejudice. Nora chewed calmly. I already knew. Wait, what? I had her investigated. After I got the internal ledgers. I figured as long as Mina was in Richard's life, she'd never stop causing trouble. So I found leverage. You sent the photos to your father. I did. Tanya stared. Nora. You're terrifying. I'm grateful. Nora raised her glass. Terrifying in the right direction, I hope. The divorce finalized in August. Mina got $50,000 and a 3-year-old car. She'd be out of the house within a year. After 15 years of doing nothing, she had nothing left. The day of the settlement, Nora saw her outside the courthouse. Mina, hollow and gray, flanked by Anne, who was weeping mascara down her cheeks. They saw Nora across the street, sitting in her car. Nora didn't wave. She didn't smirk. She just looked. The same expression Susan had worn after the coffee incident. Then she pulled away. Back at her apartment, Nora sat in her car for a long time, hands on the wheel. A text from Dylan, done. Done. She let her forehead rest on the steering wheel. Her shoulders shook once, twice, then she pushed herself upright. At the elevator, Dylan was there, white shirt, sleeves rolled, take-out bags in hand. I figured you wouldn't want to go out tonight. She unlocked the door. Behind her, he hugged her. You've been through so much, he murmured. I'm fine, she said into the doorframe. I know, he said. Just standing here. September. The Susan Chen Foundation launched. Startup capital, $500,000. Mission, legal aid for women in domestic disputes, property division, domestic violence, spousal fraud. At the opening ceremony, Nora said, my mother deserved better. I can't change her past. But I can change someone else's future. If a woman walks through our doors, we will help her. No questions. No fees. A week later, she took her first call. A teenage girl with a hoarse voice, my father beats her. She wants to leave, but she thinks she'll lose everything. The house is in his name. The money's in his accounts. She has nothing. Give me your mother's name, Nora said. We have lawyers who specialize in this. We'll meet with her for free. But she has no money. Tell her she doesn't need money. Tell her this is what we owe her. 2 years later. Nora sat in the executive office at Guodong Building Materials, the office her mother had never been allowed to occupy. Richard had retired to the chairman's seat and rarely came in. They had an understanding, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but a working relationship between two adults who shared a last name. Anne had dropped out of college, deleted her social media, and took freelance design jobs that barely covered her mother's rent. Mina had tried working at a supermarket for 3 months and quit. The family's fall from grace was local legend. Nora and Dylan still weren't married. We'll get around to it, he said. Or not. It doesn't change anything. Tanya had built a thriving family law practice around the foundation's cases. One March afternoon, Nora visited her mother's grave. She wore her mother's favorite cream coat and carried white roses. The cemetery was quiet under a pale spring sky. She knelt and placed the flowers, brushed dust from the headstone. Mom, she said, taking a folded paper from her pocket, the Foundation's annual report, over 1,200 consultations, 83 lawsuits, 47 women freed from abusive marriages, $3 million recovered on their behalf. Everything I've done, she said, came from you. She let the silence settle. Then, I'm okay. She walked back down the hill. At the gate, Dylan leaned against the car, waiting. He opened the passenger door. Ready? Ready. As the car pulled away, Nora looked back at the magnolias blooming white across the hillside. They looked like clouds. Or like her mother's smile. Ahead, the road stretched wide. Spring was in full bloom.